There is a beautiful truth we often misunderstand in life. We call it being alone, but sometimes life is not isolating you, it is inviting you. Let me tell you a story. Story 1. The retired teacher when silence became his classroom again. There was a 67-year-old school teacher named Mr. Sharma. For more than 4 decades, his life had followed a rhythm that never stopped. Morning bell at 7:30, classroom full of restless students, chalk dust on his fingers, and a mind constantly thinking about lesson plans, exams, and discipline. He was respected, even loved. Students greeted him on the streets long after they graduated. Parents trusted him. Colleagues admired him. His identity was deeply tied to being Sir Sharma, the teacher. But life has a quiet way of changing its tone. The day he retired, something unusual happened. No more alarm clock. No more students calling good morning, sir. No more urgency to leave home. The house that once felt too small for his busy life suddenly became too silent. At first, he thought retirement would feel like freedom, but instead, it felt like disappearance. He would sit on his old chair near the window and watch time pass like a slow river. Days felt longer, nights felt heavier. He once told a friend, I think I was useful only when I was busy. Now I am just existing. That sentence reflects what many people secretly feel after retirement, not uselessness, but loss of identity. For weeks, he avoided routines, woke up late, skipped meals, watched television without interest. It felt like life had paused and forgotten to restart. But one day, something small shifted. He found an old notebook while cleaning a drawer. It contained handwritten notes from his teaching days, lessons, thoughts, even jokes he used in class. As he flipped through the pages, something softened inside him. He realized he had spent his life giving knowledge, shaping minds, and sharing wisdom. That evening, instead of sitting in silence, he wrote a letter to one of his old students. Just a simple message. I hope life is treating you kindly. To his surprise, the student replied within days. Then another. Then another. Slowly, a new rhythm returned, not of obligation, but of connection. He began mentoring young students online. He started reading books he never had time for before. He even began writing reflections about life, not exams. One morning, while sipping tea, he said something profound. I thought retirement ended my purpose. But actually, it removed my noise so I could hear my own thoughts again. And that is the hidden truth. Sometimes life does not take things away to punish you. It takes them away to return you to yourself. Story 2. The widow who rediscovered life from loss to inner blooming. There was a woman in her early 60s who had lived a full life with her husband. They were partners in every sense, raising children, managing responsibilities, and building a home filled with routines and shared memories. Her days were never empty. Even silence felt shared. But after her husband passed away, the house changed its language. The same walls that once echoed with conversations now held stillness. The chair he used to sit on remained untouched. Even the smallest things like morning tea or evening news felt incomplete. At first, she tried to fill the silence. She kept the television running all day. She called relatives often. She surrounded herself with noise because silence reminded her of absence. One night, she broke down and said, I don't know how to live in a house that no longer speaks. But grief, when not resisted, slowly transforms. After months of emotional struggle, something inside her softened. She stopped fighting the silence. Instead, she started sitting with it. Every morning, she would sit by her balcony and observe the world waking up, birds flying, sunlight spreading, people walking to work. She began noticing things she had ignored for years. One day, she planted a few flowers in small pots, then a few more. Gardening became her quiet companion. She would talk to the plants softly, as if life was listening in a different form. Later, she joined a local community group that helped underprivileged children. At first, it was just a way to stay occupied, but soon she discovered something unexpected. She was smiling again. One of the children once asked her, Why do you always help us, Auntie? She paused for a moment and said, Because I realized love does not end when a person leaves, it just changes direction. Over time, she stopped seeing herself as alone. She started seeing herself as available for life, for growth, for service, for peace. Years later, she reflected, When my husband was alive, I lived with him. After he left, I learned how to live with myself. And that is the quiet miracle of solitude. It does not erase love, it deepens it into wisdom. Story 3: The Silent Morning Man, the Man Who Chose Inner Company. In a small park, there was an elderly man who arrived every morning at the same time. He would sit on the same bench, carry the same newspaper, and observe the same world waking up. To most people, he looked lonely. People would often wonder, why does he sit alone every day? Where is his family? Does he have anyone to talk to? One day, a curious young boy gathered courage and approached him. Uncle, he asked, don't you feel bored sitting alone every day? The man smiled gently, folded his newspaper, and looked at the sky for a moment before answering. I am not bored. I am listening. The boy looked confused. Listening to what? The man replied softly, to my thoughts, to my memories, to my breath, and sometimes to silence itself. The boy did not fully understand, but he sat beside him. The man continued, when I was younger, I was always surrounded by people. Meetings, work, family responsibilities, my mind was always outside. I never had time to meet myself. He paused and pointed at the rising sun. But now I have time, and I realize something very important. Silence is not empty, it is full of answers. As days passed, the boy kept returning. Slowly, he realized the man was not escaping society. He was simply no longer dependent on it for peace. One morning, the man was not at his usual bench. The boy waited, but he never came again. Later, someone said he had passed away peacefully in his sleep. But what stayed with the boy was not his absence, it was his presence in silence. Years later, the boy grew up and often remembered that old man. Whenever life became noisy or overwhelming, he would sit quietly and recall those words. Silence is not empty, it is full of answers. And he understood something profound: the man was never alone. He had learned how to keep the best company possible, his own awareness. Final thought: being left alone after 60 is not life withdrawing its warmth, it is life changing its direction. It quietly removes the noise of roles, responsibilities, and expectations so that something deeper can finally be heard: your own inner voice. In earlier years, you live outwardly for family, work, duty, and society. But in this phase, life gently invites you inward toward reflection, healing, and understanding yourself without labels. What once felt like loneliness slowly transforms into clarity. What once felt like emptiness begins to feel like space. And in that space, something sacred happens. You stop becoming who the world needed you to be and start remembering who you truly are. Because the soul does not need constant company to feel alive. It needs awareness, acceptance, and peace. So, if life has given you solitude after 60, do not rush to fill it with distraction. Sit with it, listen to it, grow with it. You may discover that what you once called being alone was actually life finally giving you back to yourself.